I am Thomas, and this is a true crime story that happened here in my neck of the woods, Forest Hills. A man has been indicted, or is it indicted? Indicted, pardon. And it seems like indicted, charged for murder over duck sauce, essentially, is the root, the start of this horrible tragedy. And it takes place Forest Hills, Queens. You could say Briarwood on the border there. About, just to give you a geographical sense, about 25 minutes from Manhattan, in the borough of Queens. Even if you're familiar with King of Queens in that setting, this is that area more or less along Queens Boulevard here, a major thoroughfare. So let's rewind the story here. The individual that they had indicted, he has a 10-count indictment charging him with murder in the second degree, criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree, criminal mischief, menacing, and stalking. So according to the charges, it all started initially back in 2021 November around 9:30, where the individual placed an order for Chinese food at the Great Wall Chinese restaurant on Queens Boulevard. This is the mural. And it was closed for a long time, until very recently. So, started over Chinese food order at the Great Wall. The person that's been charged, the alleged murderer, asked for extra duck sauce packets, which he was given. The defendant became irate, nonetheless, and argued with workers at the eatery. He then insisted that he get a refund because he wanted to return the food. But the worker refused to take the order back, and the defendant called the cops. At that point, when the cops came, when the police arrived at the restaurant, the worker explained that due to COVID, the restaurant could not accept food back. The defendant stormed out of the restaurant, and in the months that followed, he allegedly routinely threatened and harassed the restaurant's personnel over duck sauce packets and Chinese food. Can you imagine that? According to the charges, now this happened in November, you know, right, when the Chinese food was not being taken back, and there you see the Great Wall establishment. As you could see, there are people in front that represent the guardian angels. That's a vigilante group, kind of to make sure, keep order, especially since a crime just recently happened there, and they just recently opened, so they were keeping watch to make sure nothing happens, no retaliation. So that's why we're not able to get much closer, but that's as close as we're going to get. You have an idea of where the restaurant was, or is rather, it's in a shopping center, so it's a very crowded little area, a little strip mall. So in December now, the victim, he walked outside the restaurant and saw the defendant allegedly using a knife to damage a restaurant worker's car that was parked outside the Chinese food restaurant. There's a close-up of the Great Wall Chinese restaurant. The defendant was wearing a black surgical mask, allegedly threatened the workers and the delivery man. He allegedly said, "I have a gun, and be careful, this is the last time I'm going to tell you." And he walked to his vehicle. 3 restaurant workers followed and confronted him, the defendant. One of them pulled down the black mask, and the others took pictures of Hirsch's face with their cell phones. As well, the defendant was named Sir Hirsch, as well as the license plate on the defendant's SUV. According to charges, on January 28th, after a snowstorm, one of the workers was outside shoveling snow just before 10 p.m. when the defendant allegedly showed up and approached. He approached, with a firearm at the man, threatened him, saying, "How's your car? Remember me?" That he's going to kill his whole family. The worker rushed back inside the restaurant to call the police. When he went back outside, the defendant was gone, but the tires on the worker's car were slashed. So we're going up here, just to fast forward the story. We're going up, and we're going to backtrack here. We're going up this block, where unfortunately, on April 30th, the defendant followed the victim who was making a delivery. Followed him, unbeknownst to the victim. Came at this intersection and shot him. We're approaching the intersection here. He shot him.
In 500 feet,
allegedly.
turn right onto 108th Street.
The victim was making a delivery April 30th on his scooter.
The next right on 108th Street.
Made the delivery. Was approaching this intersection, and that's when the defendant approached the victim on foot at this intersection. The victim recognized the defendant. He started to back away on the scooter, but at that moment, the defendant allegedly fired a single shot. The bullet ripped into his chest. He fell to the ground and died as a result of a single gunshot wound. These are the crime scene photos, as you can see, in that intersection. According to the charges, the defendant was allegedly seen running back to his SUV and then driving away from the scene to his wife's apartment. The defendant parked his car, entered the building. After the indictment, an arrest warrant was issued at the request of the DA's office, and the court authorized search warrants were executed at the defendant's wife's home. And police, once there, allegedly recovered 8 firearms from a closet. And this is where we stand. This case is ongoing. Many witnesses to this story, and it all stems over duck sauce, allegedly. A tragedy.